So anyone who doesn't know me who's watching this, my name is Sarah, and let's see. I would like to tell my metastatic breast cancer story, uh, but it starts kind of a while back. I'd say about 3 or so years ago. Um, I started having pain along my left side. Um, and it was really easy to ignore. It it came and went once in a while, and it was certainly not the amount of pain that you would go and see a doctor for. I think most people probably wouldn't see a doctor for this kind of pain. So, anyways, I long story short, I ignored it for a really long time, and uh, I had depression at the time and anxiety, but I had clinical depression. I was hospitalized with it for a time, and uh, I've gotten on like a medication, an antidepressant, and I have some anti-anxiety stuff if I need it. And I've worked through things, and less panic attacks and depression was kind of getting more manageable. And then this pain. And I think that what was left over of my depression kind of added to the whole thing. So I think that I was kind of, I don't really know how to put this into words. I think that I didn't think enough of myself to find my value and like just go see a doctor about it or whatever. So anyway, after some time, I had started talking to some people because I was isolating. I was deep in isolation, and I had decided that it was time for me to come out of my shell and start talking to, I don't know, maybe just a few people even other than my husband. So I went, um, hmm, so I was having this pain. It would come and go, and I started talking to my sister again. It had been almost a decade since I had been socializing with people, and I guess I didn't mind strangers so much as I just didn't want. This is very difficult for me to talk about. I have some like avoidant personality traits. If you know anything about like avoidant personality disorder, and I'm not self-diagnosing myself or anything like that, but when I read the traits of that kind of disorder, that's very similar to how I feel and have felt for a very long time. So, and by a very long time, I mean since before adolescence, probably. So, anyway, um, I think that I was finally giving into that and isolating and making myself kind of hide away a little bit more, a lot more, and then eventually completely. And eventually became even an issue in my marriage that I was having difficulty communicating, and the depression had gotten so severe and my isolation had gotten so severe that I eventually ended up hospitalized for that. And that's how I ended up getting the help that I needed. And I got antidepressants and something for my anxiety attacks because that's a real thing. And it's been a real journey, just that. So getting to the point of wanting to actually take care of myself has even been a real difficult thing. So then I started talking to people a little bit more, and my sister was one of them. And in fact, she was the first. And we were catching up and talking, and at one point I had mentioned this pain, and it was in 2019. And she said, you know, she knows more about breast health, or did at the time anyways. She knew a lot more about breast health than I did at the time. And she urged me to get that checked out. And I thought, well, okay. And it was like November. So I thought, I'll wait until after the holidays. So I waited over a year with that pain. And around towards middle to the end of December, because I had been checking, and I found what I thought was maybe just vaguely a lump. Just, I couldn't tell. So I asked my husband, and he agreed that this was definitely a really vague, I don't know, maybe kind of thing. So I did. I waited until after the holidays, and then the day after New Year's, so January 2nd, I called my doctor and just my general practitioner. Nice guy, really nice guy. And his nurse just took it absolutely seriously. And I was like, oh, it's nothing. It doesn't even hurt. I mean, I feel so stupid even mentioning it. No, she said. No, really, really. And so this team of ladies helped me basically get essentially my armpit into a mammogram. But first, I'd gone to the doctor, and he agreed with Jerry, my husband. He was like, it's absolutely, I don't know, maybe. So he ordered the mammogram. So before the mammogram, they took me into a room where they did like an ultrasound to see what they could see. And what they found was towards my armpit. So like this area right here, in my pectoral muscle and towards my armpit. So they, mammogram, and then back in for, I think what they did was they used the mammogram to confirm, and then they took some biopsies. So that was a day. And then due to depression, I think I was actually driving home kind of smiling a little, like maybe this is cancer. Like just really, really dark thoughts that depression causes sometimes. That this was sort of like a happiness for me. And I felt kind of light about it. But anyway, that lasted for so long, but like I don't want to dwell there too much. I made a video, like a podcast, about depression and anxiety, and maybe where these thoughts come from, and suicide ideation, that kind of thing. So anyways, I could kind of separate the two. Anyway, so my doctor called me then, like, I think it was probably even, I want to remember if it was 2020. And it was January. It was the first week of January. And when he called me and said that I had cancer, it was invasive. It was ductal cancer, he said. And then made an appointment with me to come back and see him like the next day. So I went to see him because I was like, what stage? What's happening? Because you hear cancer and you're thinking like, I'm dying like right now. Like right now. So, and had I had any foresight, maybe I would have brought my camera with me, because, yeah, it was kind of scary. So I went in by myself, and, he had a little more information from the biopsies, I think, is what it was. And he said that it was invasive ductal cancer. So it was like a little bit worse. And I kind of was like, oh, well, what stage? And he couldn't tell me because there's not enough information in the biopsy to tell you. So, all right, okay, fine, that's fine. So he says, we're going to need more scans and things like that. And I want to send you to a really good surgeon. And she's like just across the highway, same medical group. So I went there with my husband. And this was still January. But it very much felt like, because it was so close to New Year, it felt like I was being told, Happy New Year, you have cancer. So that was really difficult. And a weird mishmash of like, because of my depressed brain sometimes, because of that, those intrusive thoughts or whatever, this was, so part of my brain was registering this as good news. I've made peace with that. That's not necessarily, I mean, I'm definitely following a treatment plan. But I don't feel like I have the pressure anymore of having to decide if I'm going to kill myself or not. So it's really done some interesting things for my depression. So if you have depression, cancer, I don't recommend cancer to anybody, but I'm just saying that, like, pretend you have cancer for a second, and your depression is like, oh, because the choices, I just didn't feel like I was burdened with those choices. So anyway, some of the first tests that I had to get, well, definitely more biopsies. And I remember in one biopsy, there was this, and it was all these ladies, and I felt very encircled by their support. They were being very gentle with me and very kind. And at every step of the way, they were like, you know, just really kind and really sweet, and very concerned for my well-being. And like sometimes even like taking biopsies, they would say, I'm sorry, this hurts. I know this hurts. You know, it was like very still. Because the more still you lay, the I don't know. Anyway, I remember at one point in one of my biopsies, and it was an ultrasound guided biopsy. And so the room was kind of dark, and it was really quiet. And the lady doing the biopsy was behind me. She's a doctor, and then the technician was in front of me doing the ultrasound. And it was so quiet that I remember thinking, like, I wasn't sure what to say. So I said, so like that Chinese flu or whatever that's going around from China, what's, how serious is that? And she said in this tone that I remember, like, she really, she had, like, her whole thought was in what she was doing. So as she's doing the biopsy, she says in this tone, like, shut the fuck up. She's like, yeah, pretty serious, So like that virus from over in China turned out to be COVID. At the time, they were just calling it a coronavirus and explaining to the public what a coronavirus was. And essentially the government here in the United States, and kind of in a lot of countries too, I don't just want to make it sound like it was the United States, but sort of dropped the ball from my perspective. Not at that time. At that time, I was just like, whatever. But it would turn out that later on, a lot of like the whole downplaying thing made it politicized my cancer to me. So, yeah. Anyway, not because of my doctors, just because of my own personal. So if any of my views come across in this video, please just grain of salt. Don't. I'm no expert on anything. So, one of the first tests that they did was a DNA test. So here's an interesting thing. Because I'm half adopted. So my dad, when he married my it was my sister and I, and when my original birth father had left the scene and they were divorced. And so when my mom married my adopted dad, the guy that I call dad, I was like 4 years old. So when they got married, he adopted me. Like they even had our birth certificates changed to show him as our father, like our birth father. And so he was the only dad I knew. Um, and because of this, they wanted to do a DNA test because I didn't have access to like half of my family history. And I don't know how this changes your treatment plan. I don't know how this changes how they look at your cancer differently. I don't know exactly all the ins and outs of this, and I can certainly look into it more and do more videos in the future about this. But my BRCA1 test, the DNA test, came back inconclusive. Now, it was interesting though that people should know, and I'm not sure if this is the same in all the states, but in the state where I live, that BRCA1 test, they there is a program that they have to allow it, and like your insurance even will have to cover it if you don't know half of your family history. So I didn't know about any of that, or if there was any other breast cancer in my family. So we paid out of pocket for it because it was actually cheaper than going through our insurance company because of the way the law is worded or whatever, that they had to offer us a discount essentially. And we took them up on it, and it was inconclusive. So what they do then, if your BRCA1 test comes back inconclusive, is they treat it like it's a negative, like as if you don't have any DNA that's a precursor to any of this, that it's just, so they continue like as if it's a negative. So therefore, I don't know what they would do if it had been positive, how different my treatment would be. Okay, so from the biopsies, we were able to tell this is HR positive cancer, which is great because HR positive cancer is more likely to react in a good way to hormone treatment, or should I say less hormone treatment, because what they do then is eventually they would stop my estrogen production and cause menopause. And that's going to eventually probably be its own video too. But just so you know, in my story, it involves a lot of menopause stuff. So anyways, what HR positive means is that there's a hormone receptor to my cancer that is positive, meaning you can use hormones to treat my cancer. So, okay, then let's see. What we should talk about next is probably to do with the next stage of my diagnosis, because I didn't actually get my stage 4 diagnosis for months. It was like literally like 4 months. And so January, I go through like lots of biopsies, a lot of blood tests, and they're gonna cure my cancer. Okay, so this was the treatment plan. We're gonna cure your cancer. You have invasive ductal cancer, and it is grade 2. And I have a video about. I can link it below. I have a video about the different grades of cancer and stages of cancer. So they can tell you from your biopsies what grade cancer you are, and that's essentially like how aggressive your cancer is, how your stage of cancer is how advanced it is. But your grade of cancer, they can tell from the biopsies, and your stage of cancer, they need the tumor and this tissue around it to really look at it under a microscope. But just the biopsies, they can give you kind of a basic idea of how fast growing those cells are compared to the healthy cells around it. So my cancer is grade 2, which is, it's grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3 is the worst. So right there in the middle is mine, which they explained to me literally word for word. It's a slow growing cancer. So it's not real aggressive. I guess grade 3 cancer, you want to think of like the type A personality kind of thing. So yeah, anyway, like a really motivated cancer that's not letting anything in its way or whatever. That's a scarier diagnosis than what I have. So anyway, so I have the grade 2 diagnosis at that point. Then they're going to cure me in February. And what the plan was to do a lumpectomy and just take out the lump and examine it under a microscope after the surgery. And they were going to take some of the lymph nodes, a couple biopsies from those too. And then they were going to stage my cancer for me after the surgery. But from what they could tell at that time, they were just going to give me a little chemo, a little radiation, some hormone treatment, and then send me on my way. They were going to cure me. And I'm not talking about remission. I can't stress this enough because this is a really good case for why you want your regular mammograms and you want to know your family history, because they were going to cure my cancer. Cure, not remission. There are cures for some cancers that have good funding for research. So breast cancer is, I mean, it used to be like one of the number one killers of women, and now women live with it for years and years. So we've learned so much about it that it's one of those cancers that, it's scary. You don't want to mess around with it. You don't want to ignore it, but you definitely, if you get diagnosed with breast cancer, it's not the worst kind of cancer to have. It's a popular cancer. Lots of people get it. That means tons of people have paid for research for this stuff. It gets full attention from the scientific community, the medical community. And so, yeah. So cancer, from that perspective, I have the best kind of stage 4 cancer you can have, pretty much. If you're going to get cancer, I'll get more into how they staged it. That's a trippy story. So before doing my lumpectomy, they send me back to my general practitioner, my GP. And they say, we just want to put a pre-op exam. Make sure that she's okay to do surgery and go under the knife and have anesthesia, whatever. So he checks me out, everything's fine. Everything's fine. And then he sends me for a little extra blood work on my way out the door. So I stop in phlebotomy and they take a little blood and I leave. And in that blood test, they found spiked liver enzymes. Now, it turns out later on, spiked liver enzymes have nothing to do with my cancer. But at the time, we didn't know this. So I right away think, oh my God, my cancer spread to my liver. What do I do? So I run to the internet, of course, Google, what does it mean? And it starts telling me all these horrible things about having secondary breast cancer in your liver. And it was awful. And so they sent me for a PET scan. And they're like, yeah, your liver's fine. Your secondary breast cancer is in both your lungs. And okay, so they didn't say it like that. They said you have nodules in your lungs. But after talking to the guy who does the pulmonary surgery, oh my God, he was a really intense guy. After speaking with him, I was pretty convinced because he didn't want to call it cancer. He said he was going to biopsy these nodules. Okay. But he didn't want to call it cancer yet. It could be anything. He was like, it could be so many things. So many things start this way. It's the beginning of something. And I thought, what's the likeliness that I have cancer right now and something starting in both of my lungs? Mm-hmm. So I went for the PET scan, which is like a keto diet over the weekend and then PET scan on Monday. Um, so I go for the PET scan, and it shows up that I have all these tiny little nodules all over both of my lungs. And he wants, or needs to, I guess, he can't scope it. The nodules are too small to be scoped. So normally what they would do is just do a scope, like an endoscopy almost, but like kind of like, I don't know, somehow they get into your lung and grab one of the nodules and leave. And it's very uninvasive, but he didn't feel confident that he would be able to even find the nodules that way because they were deep in my lungs. So the only other way to do this, and I can talk about this some other time, but um, it required a major, um, it required a major lung surgery that was really difficult to recover from because um, it involves going through your rib cage. So what they do is they collapse one lung, well, they put you under, so, and then they put you on a ventilator to breathe for one lung and then collapse the other lung. And since my breast cancer was on this side, they ended up collapsing this lung on the right side. And so there were two incisions. There was one kind of under my breast and then one kind of more to the side. And yeah, I might do just a different video about that at some point. It'll be hard to get through this story just talking, but anyway, long story short, the surgery was a success. You know, the risks and all that he had to warn me about beforehand were fine. And he came in my room after the surgery and he was like, it was good. I don't think it's anything to do with cancer. It's great. And he's like, I'll give you a call when I know for sure. I was like, cool. And he left. And then this was late March, you know, like, yeah. So it was the end of March by this point. And they wanted me to stay overnight 2 nights because I woke up with like a tube sticking out of my chest and they had to pull it out. I thought my husband was gonna pass out. Oh my God, it was awful. But anyways, they pulled it out and then pulled it, like they left a stitch in that they could pull shut. And so anyway, there was all that cartilage they had to go through, and like so I still have some back pain. It's been 2 years and I still have back pain where they had to separate my ribs. So been intense couple of years. So at this point, the hospital is like a ghost town because COVID. And like half the country's making fun of people for masking, and I got cancer in my lungs. Well, anyway, I didn't know that at the time. I went home and I was just like, yeah, I don't know, man. That's a weird thing. I'm going to have to, you know, because he had to figure out what it was if it wasn't cancer. So he calls me on April 2nd. I was expecting the call a day earlier, but he called me April 2nd. And he told me that it was cancer. And then he was sorry that, you know, he practically danced in my hospital room. Like he was so happy and smiling and thumbs even. Like he didn't think he was looking at cancer at all. He didn't think it looked at all like cancer. He was super happy. And I don't know if it was just like a high adrenaline thing too, because he had just completed kind of a complicated thing. And it was a dangerous surgery and I came out fine. And so I think that was part of it. Maybe. that he was celebrating job well done that I didn't realize. Because I was trying not to think of, like, I just, when in our meeting, he must have thought I was crazy. I'll talk about that story some other time. That's not something I can just talk about and then continue. So, anyways, all right. So I went home and it was like a pillow in front of me to like support me from doing this, and it felt like my diaphragm was twisted. It was, I don't know if it was or not, but my diaphragm was definitely swollen, they said. And then I remember like 3 months later calling his office and being like, when is this going to start getting better? You know, because I mean, it still hurt to cough or, walk, breathe deep, take a sigh even. And they were like, well, you just had major surgery. Like, they compared it to open heart surgery and told me that it takes about like a year to recover. Okay. In the meantime, to not vote, not in person anyway, because there was issues with our voting machines and stuff at the time. And the primaries in the state of Wisconsin, here where I live, yeah. So anyways, I didn't get to vote in our primaries because the Republicans wouldn't like postpone anything because there was this, anyway, uh, so they didn't want to keep us in the hospital very much, and I really dug deep to not have to stay for 2 nights. So they were like, well, if you can complete a meal, like a full meal, we'll let you go. And I did. I was just like, and they were like, well, then we want to see you walking a little bit. So I started doing laps around the unit. And then they were like, okay, you can go. Because I just wanted to not be around people. And they were great people, let me tell you. They were amazing caretakers, and they were really good at their jobs. Competent, confident, knowledgeable people. Wonderful, kind caretakers. Any of my personal anxieties towards being around people is just me. People are fine. It's me. So anyway, it's my nerves, But anyway, so I quit smoking. And duh. And just cold turkey. Every time you want to buy a pack of cigarettes once you quit smoking, it's like, but I'll have to quit smoking again. Because you'll start all over again. And I just didn't want to, and it was expensive, and so I gave it up. I still sometimes go out of state with some friends and stuff, and we go up to Michigan and buy their legal weed, because not even for medical can you have marijuana here if you're an adult, except for I think there's some seizure disorder that you can have it for with children under 18 or something like that. Anyway, so none of that for me here. Anyways, not here. But I did try a Rick Simpson oil, 60 grams in 90 days. That was before the surgery, so I had to go off of it for 2 weeks before, So anyways, and so after the surgery, I was working on finishing that really fast, as fast as I could, because I had that 2-week break. And so that was an interesting 90 days, I'll just say, overall. Well, plus the 2 weeks. Because family from Colorado had heard that I had cancer, and they were just throwing anything at me that they could, just anything that would help. So, yeah, that's okay. So that's kind of the first part of my cancer story, and I guess at this point, what I'm going to do is stop the video and maybe do a little editing and see how long this is getting before finishing my story. So the diagnosis at that point was, you have metastatic breast cancer. So that's That is what it is. And that's okay. I, I'm living with it, and other people live with this disease. And honestly, now that I only go to the cancer clinic once a month instead of all the time, like in the beginning, it's been much easier to see it more as a condition than a disease. Um, and I have positive things to say about the treatment I've received and the medications that I'm taking and the people in the work, COVID, all of it. So if you're interested in more of that, please feel free to, subscribe if you're interested in my story and hearing more of it. Um, and I'm also going to include a little footage of my appointment that I had earlier today. For the first time since COVID started in 2020. So, like, not even halfway through my diagnosis, my husband had to stop. I mean, like, I guess I would say, no, he made it throughout most of the diagnosis because he came to the hospital. They allowed him there in the room with me because neither of us had had COVID at that point. But, yeah, I just, after the diagnosis thing, treatment and so forth, kind of things take off a little bit. But at this point, I was kind of told to be, I was kind of put into a cocoon that I'm still residing in a little bit because my immune system is being lowered a lot because of chemotherapy and so forth. So in my next video, we're going to be discussing chemotherapy. We're going to talk about menopause. We're going to talk about quarantine, menopause, treatment as far as like chemotherapy and like my Lupron injections and so forth, and the treatment plan that they devised for me, because essentially once they said you have stage 4 cancer, the whole plan of what they were going to do for me before, so the lumpectomy, the chemo, all of the stuff that they were going to do to cure my cancer, that was out the window. Everything I had done to learn about my condition at that point was useless. I had to start over. So the next video will be kind of a quick, a very sudden turn to that kind of thing. And that was no less easy. Learning that I had to go on chemotherapy for the rest of my life was no less easy than learning that I had stage 4 cancer. So, but I think it was interesting that he did wait that extra day to call me. That pulmonologist called me to tell me that I had stage 4 cancer the day after April Fool's Day. He called me on April 2nd, 2020. And that was the day I got my diagnosis. So anyway, that's just the beginning of my story. And I hope that it's not a story with an end yet. I'm still here. So that's the good news. And there's a lot of advancements in this disease, and I'd like to share that with you. So I hope that you join me on my journey, and please, like I said, feel free to subscribe if you want to hear more. Comment if you have any questions or comments, or if you've been through this. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.